Welcome or welcome back to Mia's Life with Books. Today I'm going to be doing my November reading wrap up. November was a very good reading month for me. I had a lot of high ratings and a lot of amazing books that I'm excited to talk about. I think there are only 2 books that haven't been in reading vlogs, so if you want even more of my thoughts on any of these books, there will probably be a vlog up on my channel that you can look at, but I think we should just get into it. But first of all, we are going to do the stats. So I read 10 books this month, 6 of which I read physically, which means 4 I read on my Kindle. One of those on my Kindle was an ARC from NetGalley, and one of them was a novella. In terms of genre, I had 1 dystopian/sci-fi, 1 romance, 1 YA romance, 2 thriller/mysteries, and 5 fantasy books. So we did have, again, quite a bit of a range of genres, but fantasy definitely dominated. As mentioned, I did have a very high rated month. My average rating overall was 4.35, which I think is absolutely amazing. And I had 2 5-star books, 5 4.5 stars, 2 4 stars, and 1 3 star. The fact that the majority of books were 4.5 star or over is actually amazing, and it just shows how many good books I read. A lot of them were very anticipated reads for me, and ones that I knew I would love. I think I did very good at choosing some good books this month. So now, let me tell you about them. So the first book that I finished in November was Coldwire by Chloe Gong. This is the YA dystopian sci-fi book, and this is also the one that I read as a NetGalley arc, but I do now have my physical copy because I went to an event for this one and it's actually signed and personalised, which is very exciting. So I do now have a physical copy, but like I said, I've read this on my Kindle as a NetGalley arc. I did also read the majority of it in October, but I finished it in November, hence why it is in the November wrap up. So in Coldwire we have a world which is separated into up country and down country, and up country is essentially a virtual reality copy of the normal world, which is down country. So we have a lot of technology and AI centered issues and situations in this book, which was really interesting to navigate, but we'll get more onto that. And Upcountry is ruled and owned by this huge tech giant company called Nile Corp. Nile Corp have these forces which are essentially soldiers to kind of do their bidding both in Upcountry and Downcountry. In Downcountry we are following Aurelie, and she is part of Nile Corp's forces, and she has been charged with a fellow group of Nile Corp employees to find this anarchist that is essentially causing a lot of trouble and is a bit of a rebel. However, when trying to capture him, he actually ends up kidnapping her. So we've got that storyline going on, but we also follow another character called Leah, who is up in Upcountry, and she is training to become part of Nile Corp. She is at this essentially training school, and in this school they have to go on a final assignment, graduate, and also to determine where in Nile Corp's ranks they will end up. So we follow Leah as she is given her final assignment, but she is given this assignment with her academic rival, which is unheard of because usually they only have individual assignments. So there's something a bit interesting going on there. So we have these 2 kind of separate storylines, but they actually end up mirroring each other in the way that they seem to be related in following the same goal, just in slightly different ways. So they do kind of cross over a little bit. Obviously I can't go too much into that, but just they are separate storylines, but they do seem very connected in the goals that they are trying to achieve, and you find out more about that as we are going through. So honestly, this book was so clever. I just think Chloe Gong is a genius because the way she created this world is just so impressive. There was so much detail to it and so many clever additions and aspects of this world, which are just so clever. It was actually insane. It did take a bit of brain power to get my head around certain things and certain explanations, but I think once you get past the initial kind of introduction to this world, it does start to make a bit more sense as you go through. And I do think it was done in a way that is capable of being understood by people, if that makes sense. Like, it's not so confusing you're going to be confused the whole time. It just does take a little bit of brain power, and I think that's because it took a lot of brain power to create. So naturally, with a world this complex and detailed, you are going to have to use a bit of your brain power to get your head around it, but once you do, it is incredible. Not to mention the fact that that the plot itself was genius as well. There were so many twists in here that I was not expecting, and I genuinely had my jaw on the floor. I just think everything about this book was so clever, and it all was connected in such a clever and interesting way. I just think the plot was very intricate, just like the world was. And it was just so satisfying as we were finally piecing together different bits of this plot and the different reveals. I just think it really brought everything together, and I absolutely loved it, and I need the sequel right now. Chloe did say, I think it's aimed to come out around September next year, so 9-ish months to wait, but you can bet when it comes out I will be getting my hands on it because this was just amazing. It was also very vividly described, so obviously I mentioned there was a lot of intricacy in the world building and the world itself, but the descriptions were also so beautiful and vivid. It created such a great atmosphere and you felt really immersed in the world. Obviously this book has got very heavy cyberpunk vibes, and as someone who doesn't really spend much time in this kind of cyberpunk world and aesthetic, it was brought to life really well for me in this book, and I just pictured it so clearly and vividly. I think it's just honestly so beautiful and immersive to read, and I just think everything about it was so unique as well, like the whole up country and down country thing, and there's even more specifics and world building and politics within that as well. There are two kind of nations that are essentially in a cold war, so we've got a bit of that going on as well. Like there was so many aspects to this and it all worked so well together, and I was just in awe because this book is a masterpiece and I absolutely loved it. This was one of the books that I gave 5 stars to, and it was so good. I honestly cannot emphasize how amazing this book was. And also the characters in this, you will love them so much. They had a very strong kind of found family friendship kind of aspect too, and they all have different dynamics with each other as well, which keeps it interesting, but they all have very adorable friendships and relationships at the center of it. But they do also have different interactions in terms of like banter and the way that their situations are set up. So while all of it is very heartwarming, you do get like some funny moments and a bit of back and forth between the characters, which is really fun, but you honestly will grow to really care for all of these characters, which again makes you want to read even more of this book. Honestly, it's just such a fascinating masterpiece of a book, and I loved every second of it. So yeah, it was an easy 5-star and I cannot recommend it enough. Also, the reason why I've waffled about this one so much is because this is one of the books that wasn't in one of my reading vlogs, so I kind of needed to do a whole lowdown for you guys because it deserves to have a bit of waffling time about it. The next book I read was Mate by Ali Hazelwood. Now this was one of my most anticipated releases of the year because I love Ali Hazelwood so much. And I loved Bride, which was the first book in this kind of interconnected duology kind of thing. It was so much fun to be back in this world and with these characters. We follow Serena in this book, who is Misery's best friend from Bride. However, I can't really say too much about the details of the plot other than that, as it is a spoiler for what happens in Bride. But what I can say is that the romance in this is chef's kiss, and the plot as well also has a very interesting storyline. It's a bit more than your typical romance. As I have said in the vlog when I was reading this, I do consider this to just be a paranormal romance. Some people say it's a bit of a romantasy, you know, or fantasy romance, but I think to me it does just give paranormal romance vibes. It's just a romance between paranormal characters in a slightly fantastical world. So we do get a bit of world building in the politics aspect of what you would expect in a fantasy, and obviously fantastical creatures and ideas. I think overall it is paranormal romance at its core, and I don't think that is a bad thing. I gave this book 4.5 stars and I ate it up. I did give Bride 5 stars, so I preferred that one just a tiny bit more, but this was obviously an Ali Hazelwood book, and we all know I love Ali Hazelwood. She's one of my favourite authors. I'm always going to eat up any of her books anyway, and this was no different. It was so fun to get to know Serena a bit more as a character, as I did enjoy what we saw of her in Bride, especially with the issues that were raised in this book. We have a bit of a mystery illness kind of thing going on, and it is also interesting to see kind of political things that are going on with these characters and other personal issues, which again I can't really go into because it is, again, like I said, a spoiler for what happens in Bride. I think it was very interesting to get to explore that and to explore this world a little bit more, even if it is very much romance focused. I think the bits of the plot we did have were very nice. And also, a lot of people not complain, but speak about how this book is very spicy, and I do think there was a lot in it. However, I'm pretty sure it was like way over halfway. I'd say probably 2/3 of the way in before anything of that kind happened. So you really got to know the characters and their building relationship before we even got to that point. And even when we did get to that point and did get those scenes quite frequently after that point, I think they were very integral to the plot. I think they were used in a way to push the plot along instead of just being plopped in there just to have some spicy scenes in there. I do think Ali Hazelwood Hazelwood is good at using her spice to elevate and continue the plot, and I feel like in this book it really came across. So as someone who isn't a huge spice lover, Ali Hazelwood, for some reason, just it always hits for me, and I don't get cringed out or grossed out, even if I do know a bit too much about werewolf anatomy now. So yeah, this was just so much fun. I loved it so much. Like I said, it was a 4.5 stars, so very little to complain about. It just didn't quite give me the 5-star feelings, but other than that, I honestly don't have any complaints. Yeah, I love the characters in this, love the world, love the little bits of the fantasy politics that we get, but mainly the romance is the star of the show, and it was a great romance. If you read Bride and enjoyed it, obviously read this if you haven't already, because it was so good. Then I read Alchemy of Secrets by Stephanie Garber, which again was another one of my most anticipated releases. This is also a signed copy. It's not personalised, I just ordered the signed edition, but I still love it. Also, it is the exclusive edition and it is gorgeous. And as expected, this was actually my favourite book of the month. It was the second 5-star of the month. I will say Cold Wire is a very, very, very close second to being my favourite of the month. It was very difficult to choose between them. I've ended up going for Alchemy of Secrets just because I love the whimsical, magical nature of Stephanie Garber's writing so much. And this was, again, such an immersive, atmospheric read. And you really felt like you were in the kind of old Hollywood magical vibes of this world, and it was just so much fun. I also loved the focus on the folklore aspect of this, because essentially we are following our character Holland, and Holland studied in this class called Folklore 517, which focuses on local legends and urban myth and things to do with like the devil and spirits and bargains with the devil in old Hollywood. And Holland has always believed that these stories are real, while sometimes other people, they might have enjoyed going to the class, but they weren't true believers the way Holland is. And because her desire to believe in these is so vital to her character, she ends up being thrown into this world of legends and myths and realizing that the world is a lot more magical than it seems. And she ends up being sent on this quest to find this mysterious magical object that could potentially save her life. Not to mention the fact that everything in this world may be dazzling and beautiful, but it's very, very difficult to know what you can trust, who you can trust. So it creates a very intoxicating, mysterious, whimsical plot with so much going on, but it's done so well. And again, this is another one that I need the sequel to, because the way this ended, I am very intrigued to see where we're going to go next. I don't have a clue where we are going to go next, but I want to be along for the ride. So like I said, this is just very magical and whimsical, and we have, I think, that focus on the folklore really does add to this, and I think adds another kind of dimension and layers to this plot. And just the fact that you, along with Holland, do not know who to trust or what to trust really makes it for a roller coaster of a ride. I really felt immersed in the fact that we were going along with Holland and we knew just as much as Holland. It was interesting to really feel like you were there trying to figure out with her. When you feel that immersed, obviously you care more and you're more invested in this book, and I did just feel very invested and very thrown into this world. I really enjoyed Holland as a character, and I thought her passion for these folklore stories, and we do get to understand a bit more about her past and why she feels the way she does about these stories, and I think that really adds depth to her character. But she was a really nice character to follow. This was so good, and I'm so excited to see where we do go further in the series. Then I read I Hope This Doesn't Find You by Anne Liang. This is an adorable, cute little YA romance, which I really enjoyed. I gave it 4 stars. In this book, we are following Sadie, and Sadie is essentially the perfect student and an inherent people pleaser, but because of this, she kind of stores up all of her emotions inside, and the only way she lets them out is to draft emails to people, letting out her rants and frustrations towards them, and one day they get sent out. Most of those were sent to her rival, Julius. So now that these emails are out, one thing leads to another, and now Sadie and Julius have to spend a lot of time together to kind of rectify the situation, and that's essentially what this book is, just them kind of building on their relationship. And it's also very much a personal journey for Sadie and her kind of people-pleasing tendencies. You get a bit more to the bottom of that and also see that develop, as this is kind of obviously like a coming-of-age YA romance. We also get a lot of depth to Julius's character as well, which was really nice to see. And I do just think these characters were very, very fleshed out and very deep and real, and I really enjoyed getting to know them and getting to see their kind of relationship develop. And I think it developed in a very natural way, but it was also just so cute and adorable, and I loved it so much. Like I said, I did give it 4 stars, but I do honestly think this is one of the best YA romances that I have read, and I think it was a beautiful, adorable read with a lot of depth, but also a lot of fun. So I would definitely recommend, and I'm definitely wanting to read more of Anne Liang's YA romances. romances, as well as some of her other writing as well. Then I read 1 in 4 by Lucinda Berry. I read this one on my Kindle, and I gave this one 3 stars. It was a bit of a disappointment to me, I won't lie, which is very upsetting because I love Lucinda Berry's works, but this one just didn't hit for me. In 1 in 4, we are following this kind of reality Big Brother kind of thing, where we're following childhood stars who are now addicts, and this is kind of like a recovery rehab thing, but Big Brother style, where it's being broadcast to the whole world essentially. So we have that happening. However, one of our contestants ends up dead, and it causes this kind of murder investigation thing happening. It kind of spirals from there, which I thought sounded like a very good premise, but I was hoping we were going to get more of the kind of Big Brother kind of aspect to it, when really that reality TV show side of it ended up not being the main part of the plot. And where we did go with the plot and the story, I just did not enjoy it. It wasn't like it was silly or didn't make sense, I just didn't enjoy it, and I thought it would have been better if we'd have carried on along the original storyline and the original kind of investigation instead of going off on this tangent. I do understand what Lucinda Berry was trying to do, as I feel like always does make a point to have messaging within her books. I'm pretty sure she's an actual like psychologist, so I think there's always that interesting psychological aspect which she always deals with very well, and she does write around difficult topics very well, and in a way that is showing respect but also does create like this fun kind of thriller vibe. However, I just wasn't having a lot of fun with this one, and it wasn't that thrilling or mysterious to me. Once we kind of shifted direction, like I think, as I said, if we'd have kept going in the original direction, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more. There is one thing about Lucinda Berry's writing, it is always going to be short and snappy and fast paced. This book wasn't very long at all, but yeah, I unfortunately just didn't really enjoy where it went or enjoyed it overall. It just fell a bit flat for me, unfortunately. But that's not to say I'm not going to read more Lucinda Berry books in the past, because this is the anomaly out of Lucinda Berry's books that I've read. Like I said, I've usually really enjoyed her books. I've had some very high rated books from her. I think I just went into this with slightly different expectations to what we actually received, which was a bit of a shame. Then I read An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. This was so good. I've had this book on my shelf for too many years, and I can't believe it's just been sat there without me picking it up, because I absolutely loved it. As I was saying in the reading vlog, there's something about this world that is just so brutal, and the things that the characters go through is actually so heart-wrenching. But apparently it gets even more devastating as the series goes on. So I'm definitely going to have to mentally prepare myself to continue with this series, but at the same time I'm super excited too, because I'm excited to dive back into this world, to get more of these characters, more of the relationships, more of the world, more of the magic, just more of everything. I say more of the magic because this wasn't necessarily a magical fantasy. We had slightly magical aspects to it, but the fantasy elements came more from the elements of the trials, elements of kind of like the war, military, kind of academy vibes, and also a rebellion aspect to it as well. So that was kind of where we got the fantasy tropes. I do think the magic part of the world is there and will probably be expanded as the series goes on, which I think is exciting. Anyway, let me talk about what this book's about. So as mentioned, there are trials, an academy, and a rebellion, and that is all centered around our two main characters. So firstly we have Leia, or she might be called Laia, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. And essentially Laia in this universe is a scholar, which is kind of the lowest level on the hierarchy of this empire. She ends up kind of losing everything as these military people called masks invade her house, and unfortunately they do kill her grandparents and take her brother as prisoner. Leia will do anything to get her brother back, as he is the last kind of family that she has. So she eventually ends up having to be a spy to the kind of leader of the military academy, who is a very brutal and horrible woman. So she's sent in as a spy. Now also in Blackcliff Academy we have Elias. Elias is training to be one of these masks, which are the military's kind of top level and top forces, and he is very close to his graduation, where he will become a full-time mask. However, his heart is not in it, and he is planning to desert, which is of course the highest level of, I suppose, treason that someone in his position could commit. However, his graduation doesn't quite go to plan anyway, as suddenly there is mention of these trials to find the new emperor, and Elias is chosen to be one of the 4 contenders for this competition. So now he has no choice but to join in on these trials to try and become the new emperor, and that is essentially the bare bones of the plot. So again, we have kind of 2 separate storylines, but they're in the same vicinity, and eventually you do get them crossing paths a bit more. I'm excited to see even more of that as the series continues. But yeah, the trials were so unique, I think, but also very, very brutal, especially the third and fourth trial. I think there's just something about them that was just so harsh and evil, and they really hit you a bit emotionally. I think the way that this is written as well is very beautiful, but also at times it was very matter of fact and straight to the point, and I think that really helped to highlight the brutality of this world. I think it was kind of inescapable, kind of horrors of this world and what our characters were going through. And I also think you grew to care so much for the characters that when these brutal things were happening to them, it really did impact you. And I think she did a great job of making you connected to these characters and this world. I think it's a very interesting world to explore, and I'm excited to see more of it. I think the academy setting as well was very fun. I do love a good academy setting, even if this one was horrible and brutal and inherently evil, but I loved it, and I gave it 4.5 stars. So like I said, I can't believe I've had this on my shelf for literally years and did not pick it up because it was so good, and I need to continue the series. Then I read Little White Lies by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I give this one a 4-star. It was just a giggly fun time. This is a YA thriller mystery, but I would say it is definitely more of a mystery and perhaps even more of a drama. We get a lot of drama, a lot of scandal, a lot of gossip, but it is a lot of fun. It did take me a little bit to get into it, but once I was into it, I did just enjoy my time with it. We're essentially following our main character Sawyer, who has, for one reason or another, moved in with her grandmother for a little bit, and she is now taking part in the debut debutante season, as her grandmother is part of a very affluent family. However, when Sawyer was growing up, she didn't have any contact with her grandmother, as her mother says that her family cut all ties with her when she was pregnant with Sawyer, as she was a teen mother who wasn't married and obviously part of this huge affluent family. So obviously that was a bit of a scandal, so they cut all ties. So she's growing up not knowing her grandmother, not really knowing this world of the debutantes or anything. Like I said, her grandmother sought her out, and she's now living with her grandmother for a set amount of time, and her grandmother has promised her a huge sum of money to do this. And while we are following Sawyer in this debutante season, she is trying to find out who her father is because she doesn't know. No one has told her in her past. But she's also dealing with a situation including her cousin and her cousin's kind of enemy rival, and that's kind of where a bit of the gossip and blackmail comes into it. And also at the start of the book, you see these 4 girls in a jail cell, and you're not sure how they got there, why they're there, and you slowly unfold a bit more as we go back and forth between kind of leading up to the jail cell scene and also seeing bits of the jail cell scene as we're going through, if that makes sense. So it's very interesting, and it did kind of hook me in initially, where I was thinking what has kind of led to this point. I wouldn't say I was necessarily hooked the whole way. I think because it was definitely, to me, feeling more like a drama with little bits of mystery sprinkled in, it was less addictive in that sense. But Jennifer Lynn Barnes' writing is just super easy and fun to read, and she always creates very fun and lively characters, which is something that I enjoyed. And like I said, it was just fun anyway, so once I kind of let go of my expectations of it being like the Inheritance Games or the Naturals, where we had a really gripping mystery and like thrilling aspects, I kind of did learn to just kind of enjoy the drama side of it. It was a lot of fun. I would recommend it, but also if you haven't read any Jennifer Lynn Barnes and you want to, I would definitely recommend the Inheritance Games or the Naturals over this one. But if you have read Jennifer Lynn Barnes and you have enjoyed those, I think you could still enjoy this if you just go into it knowing it's quite different and it's just a giggly fun time. Just don't have very high expectations for it, and I think you'll have a fun time with it. Then I read Ninth House by Lee Bardugo, which is another one that I've had on my TBR for the longest time, and I'm so glad I finally read it because again, it was a 4.5 star. I think if anything, this month has taught me that sometimes books that have been on my TBR for years should be read sooner because I will love them. So hopefully that is a lesson to me that I will take forward into 2026, but I suppose we will see if that helps, if that actually happens. But this book was just so intimidating to me, and I'm just so annoyed that I let the intimidation kind of take over for a very long time, because I think while the reasons why I was intimidated by it were true in the sense of it is very sophisticated, you do need to use your brain power, that is specific kind of intricacies surrounding the world and particularly the magic system and the hierarchy of the societies and everything, which I will get more into in a second. It was still accessible and I still had a lot of fun, and it wasn't actually that difficult to kind of get my head around once I was into it. So I wish I didn't let that stop me from reading it sooner, because I think it was just so good anyway, and I absolutely loved it. So in Ninth House we are following our character Alex, and Alex has been essentially recruited by this, I suppose you could say, society in itself called Leith, and Leith are in charge of keeping an eye on Yale's secret societies, and these secret societies all dabble in kind of dark magic. So Leith's job is to make sure that everything goes smoothly, but also that they don't take it too far and they don't kind of cross the boundary of using this dark magic for bad and using it hurt other people, I suppose you could say. So Leith and therefore Alex are kind of in charge of keeping track of it all, but also, like I said, making it safe. So when they're doing their rituals, they need to be there to kind of make sure everything is going well and it's going how it should, if that makes sense. Because there are also these spirits called greys which are drawn to this kind of magic. Part of Leith's job, and again Alex's job, is to keep the greys away from these rituals by using different protective spells and things like that. And Alex has actually been able to see these greys her entire life, which is very rare in this world. So that's a bit of a mystery to unravel there. So we are just following Alex as she kind of becomes a member of this Society of Leith and trying to get to grips with the magic in the societies. And at first she does have a mentor to help her with this. However, we find out he's just gone. We don't know why, we don't know where he's gone. It's all very mysterious, and you slowly do find out as we go through. But Alex is now having to try and deal with everything on her own without a mentor. And also a girl turns up murdered. Alex suspects the societies may have something to do with it, so she's then also investigating the societies as she believes it is her job to do. I think that was a very complicated summary, but honestly just take my word for it. It is so good, and it sounds like there's a lot going on, and while there is, it is all very easy to understand and all comes together very easily and in such an intriguing, atmospheric way. And the magic system with these societies is so much fun. Each society has a kind of different strand of magic that is used for different purposes, and learning that was so much fun, even if it did take a bit of brain power sometimes. I think it was all so intriguing, and I was very invested in the story, and I think it was very, very well written and very well created and explored, and everything about it was just done so well. Again, the only reason why this isn't a 5-star is because it just didn't quite give me the 5-star feelings, but again, I don't have many complaints about it whatsoever. I just think it was a great book and I loved it. And I definitely think if this is a book that has been intimidating you, don't let it intimidate you, because I promise you it is a lot easier to understand and to get through than I definitely perceived it to be. So I think you would definitely enjoy it if it's something that you think you would enjoy, but the intimidation's just stopping you a little bit. So this is your sign to not let the intimidation stop you, because it is so good. Then I read Wisteria by Adeline Grace, which was my third 4.5-star book in a row. And this is the last book in the Belladonna trilogy, which I have absolutely devoured and loved this year. It's very bittersweet having finished this, and while I do have the Christmas novella Holly to read, which I'm so glad I do have, it's still quite sad that the trilogy as its own kind of unit is now over and I have finished it. But I loved every second of it, and like I said, again, this was a 4.5 star. I just think it was the perfect end to the trilogy, and we really got to enjoy certain characters and see a certain relationship grow and blossom, which I think was just so beautiful. We follow a different character in this book as we do in Belladonna, because Belladonna we follow Signa, who for all of her life has been able to see death and a lot of people around her die. And then Signa is sent to one of her last remaining relatives, which is her uncle, where she meets her cousin, and she is determined to kind of leave her life of kind of death and despair behind her. However, her cousin Blythe is severely ill, but Signa thinks there's something a bit more to Blythe's illness, so she sets out to kind of investigate that to stop, you know, death following her again. And to do this, she actually uses the help of Death himself. So that is the plot of Belladonna, and we kind of go on from there throughout the series. But like I said, this book follows a different perspective to Signa's perspective, and in Foxglove, the second book, we do follow Signa and this second perspective. So I think it was nice to kind of, you know, slowly move across to this different perspective, and it's an absolutely amazing perspective. I love her as a character. I do love Signa as well. So this book, it was a bit sad to not have Signa's perspective, but we do have a lot of Signa appearances, and she is still a key part to the story and the world, which is really nice. But yeah, the perspective we do get, which I'm not sure if it's a spoiler or not, so I'm just erring on the side of caution caution by not saying, but it's a very good perspective. And yeah, I feel like I can't say too much about this book because it is the last book in a trilogy, so it's very hard to talk about, you know, my thoughts overall. But I am going to be posting a continuing series vlog, which I'm not sure if it's going to be out before or after this video, but probably before, and this book is in it, so I have got some more of my thoughts, which are still spoiler free, but you can kind of see my reaction as I'm reading this. But yeah, I honestly loved it. I thought it was the perfect end to this trilogy, but I am now, like I said, very sad that it is over, but I definitely want to read more of Adeline Grace's work. But anyway, to keep me going, I do have the Christmas novella of Holly, like I mentioned, which I'm super excited to read very soon and to be back with these characters again. But yeah, I think I was so attached to these characters and to this world that it was a very emotional read for me as well. Like, I felt very connected to the characters to the point where I cared so much about them. It was kind of difficult to see certain things unfold and unravel. I think it was done very well. This is one of my favourite fantasy worlds and kind of feelings with these books, and all three of the books in the trilogy were a 4.5 star for me. So it's one of my favourite series. I wish one of them would have been a 5-star, but overall in my heart it is still a 5-star series. Even if I didn't have a specific 5-star book for them, I think the feeling overall gives me that feeling. So I definitely love these books so much, and they have a very special place in my heart, so I would highly recommend this series. Last but not least, I read Last Violent Call by Chloe Gong. Again, another Chloe Gong book. This is a set of 2 novellas, which is in the Secret Shanghai universe, and this is actually the book that you should read in between the Foul Lady Fortune duology. So you read the These Violet Delights duology, and then you read Foul Lady Fortune, then you read Last Violent Call, and then you will read Foul Heart Huntsman, which I'm looking forward to reading very soon. These novellas essentially act as a bridge between events in These Violent Delights and where we've got up to in Foul Lady Fortune. They kind of bridge the gap of things that we haven't seen and kind of update us on certain things that have been going on perhaps behind the scenes in Foul Lady Fortune, which I think sets us up perfectly for Foul Heart Huntsman, as certain characters are making returns and certain things are happening. I think that is set up very well in these 2 novellas, and they were just so much fun to read. They were more light-hearted, I think, than the full novels, while they still had similar darker tones in terms of, you know, violence and certain things that happen in this universe. So I will just quickly say that the These Violent Delights duology is essentially a Romeo and Juliet retelling in 1920s Shanghai, where we have Roma and Juliet from separate gangs who then have to work together to kind of figure out what's happening when there is a monster that is unleashed on Shanghai. So that's that series. And then following on from that, we have the Foul Lady Fortune duology, where we have Rosalind from the first duology, who something has happened to her where she now has these certain powers, I suppose you could say, where she has essentially been made into the perfect assassin and spy. So we're following her on a mission with another spy, and they're having to try and get to the bottom of these mysterious killings again in Shanghai. So that's the kind of vibes of both of the duologies. Definitely read These Violent Delights before you go into Foul Lady Fortune, and definitely read this novella in between the Foul Lady Fortune books, because I think it's going to have made my experience so much better. And also, they were just so fun. They were so cute, and both the plots were very interesting. One of them was kind of like these 2 characters had to seek to protect another character that they were introduced to as they were being hunted down. So we followed that. And then the second one was kind of giving like Agatha Christie, where someone turned up murdered on a train, and the 2 characters we follow there have to kind of pretend to be these investigators and get to the bottom of this murder on the train. Both the novellas are linked. They follow 2 sets of different characters, but the stories are linked. Like I said, they are also linked to the universe as a whole. I had the best time reading them, so I actually gave this 4.5 stars. So I lied when I said Wisteria was my 3rd 4.5 star book in a row, because it wasn't, because Little White Lies wasn't 4.5, but this was my 3rd 4.5 star book in a row. I find it so hard to rate novellas, because I actually would say, as far as novellas go, they were 5 stars, but I feel like it's rare for me to rate a novella higher than 4 stars, but because I enjoyed both the separate novellas so much, I thought giving it 4.5 stars made sense. So like I said, I would definitely recommend this universe as a whole, and definitely recommend reading this one in the suggested reading order, and I cannot wait to now read Foul Heart Huntsman very soon. So those were the 10 books that I read in November. I can't believe that we are now in the final month of the year. I have had such a good reading year with so many amazing books, and I hope to continue the same into December, but also into 2026. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please do leave a like and comment below what your favourite book of November was. Like I said, mine was Alchemy of Secrets, with Cold Fire being a very, very close second. And also, if you want to see more videos like this and more content from me, please do subscribe. It would mean the world to me. And hopefully I will see you in the next video soon.